Hey guys, this is Dr. Tracy here, and I am going to talk about some of the stuff out of Chapter 2. There are three major things that are being dealt with in Chapter 2, and this is the first video talking about working with functions. So in the previous chapter, we talked about methods being procedures that are associated with an object. Functions, then, are a related group of JavaScript statements that are executed as a single unit. So we create functions because we want to be able to do something and have all of its steps included. Like if I wanted to calculate the area of a triangle, I would need the base and the height and then find half of the base and multiply them together to produce a result. There's a lot of steps that go into that. But once I write down those steps and put them together under a single name, I could just call it area of triangle and be able to calculate it more than once. The book talks about named functions and anonymous functions. Anonymous functions are related statements that you're going to use only one time, but you still put them together to show that those steps are related to a single object. Those aren't used quite as much as named functions. Named functions and anonymous functions have similar syntax with the obvious difference of a name. Names of functions follow the same rules as defining variables, which means you can use letters, numbers, and underscores, but they can't start with underscore and numbers. Names of functions should be something that's meaningful, but not too long, because you need to be able to type it over and over again. There's always a set of parentheses following the name of a function. Sometimes there are parameters or arguments, but not always. Then there is a set of curly braces, and inside those curly braces are all of the statements that you want to associate together. When you have a parameter, it means it's a variable that you're going to use within a function, and it's placed within the parentheses. You could have more than one, as this example shows, calculate volume given a length, a width, and height. You can also have 0 if the function you're creating doesn't require you to provide a variable. It just depends on what you're trying to calculate. Function statements are the actual work. They're contained within those braces. They can be set in an external .js file, or they can be put on the page itself by defining the function using the reserved word function. Then the name, any parameters that are necessary, this set of curly braces, and the two statements that are being associated with this function are to create a variable called volume, which is set equal to length times width times height, and a document.write statement. To execute a function, you have to call it. Anytime you call the function, you just list the name of the function followed by the two parentheses. And any parameters that need to be passed would be put between those parentheses and would replace anything that was part of the function definition. So we pass arguments to a function by including them as variables within the parameters. There are three ways that we can call functions. We can call them specifically by using an on-click event, such as this example, a button that will show on-click, and on-click it will call a function. In that case, it will call a show message function. You can specify the function as a property for an object. So this one shows that submit button, and whenever anybody clicks the button, it's going to automatically call a function. Or you can use an event listener. An event listener is going to check to see if a click happens and then call a function that way. So they're all very similar, but they just work slightly different. An event listener is probably the most flexible. And if you look at the example that's given in the code this week, here's the JavaScript from the example that's out of the textbook. But you can see that when you're asked to create event listeners such as these, then that's looking where the element photognum, if it's changed. So that's an event listener, not just always a click, but it could just be that you added a different number to it, and so you were able to change it. So here is the resulting page, and what that means is that if I change this, now I'm creating an event, and every time that event is called, it's updating the function, which will change the total estimate of the page. So when we attach events, we add event listeners, and the event listeners that are used in this chapter help to call those functions. So return statements are a part of functions. And that's when you are calling a function and it's returning a result back to wherever the function was called from. So if in this example that's in the chapter where it wants you to update those numbers, it's sending the result back to where the numbers will be displayed. The variables that are used within a function are called local variables if they are declared inside a function. If you use the keyword var, which is required, then those variables exist as soon as the function starts, as soon as they're declared, and they cease to exist once they hit that last little curly brace. That is different than global variables. Global variables are available to all parts of the code and declared outside of a function. When you think about why you would use one or not the other, it is convenient to have global variables that can be used anywhere, but it does give the possibility for your data to be corrupt. And it also prevents you from managing memory efficiently to have variables that are storing values that you're not using except for when you run the function. So local variables are more efficient if you're not going to use them in other parts of the program. Good programming technique is to always use var keyword when declaring variables and clarify where they are created. And if you don't use the var keyword, then it becomes a global variable, and a global variable declared within a function can be problematic. So be careful with that. This example right here shows the difference between global and local variables. You see on the first line, color is created and it's set equal to the value of green. Then a function is defined which uses the var keyword again, sets the color equal to purple. Since this is created with the var, color then becomes a local variable, meaning this is not the same as that. That's a global variable. It's declared outside of the function. This is declared inside of the function, set it equal to purple. The document.write statement would print purple right here. But once it hits the curly brace, that color is gone and this color remains. So when the function is called, it would print purple. But if you used a document.write state of color, it will print green because the global variable wasn't changed. And that's why I say that you always should declare it, because you want to make sure that you're not accidentally changing different variables. A lot of functions that you can create are combinations of statements, but as this table shows, there are also some built-in functions that you can use to determine values. All right, well, that's it for functions. I'm going to create more videos for chapter 2. Hope this has been helpful.